Israel has agreed to let a whole lot of prisoners go who've been labeled as terrorists in exchange for about 40 hostages still being held by Hamas. Now, to chat about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles at the Foreign Desk. Lisa, how many potential terror prisoners are we talking about that Israel is about to release?
So this is a lopsided deal of 800 for 40 hostages.
Wow.
So among these 800, we have terrorists, we have murderers, obviously convicted of crimes, but being released for 40 innocent civilians, many of whom are above 80 years old. Women, children still in that mix. We're not sure who's going to be released just yet, but this is the name of the game. This is why terrorists play the game of taking hostages so that they can release their terrorists out of Israeli prisons. This is exactly what they had intended to do. Now, Israel is caught in a very difficult situation here because obviously they want those civilians to come back home and go to their families and try to live a normal life after being in captivity for so long. But at the same time, imagine all the potential terror there is to come that will be unleashed on Israel because of all these terrorists being released who belong in prison. It's a very difficult decision. I know that Israel is under a lot of pressure from the international community as well, from Qatar, from the United States, who are involved in these talks, pressuring Israel to take the deal. And of course, Israel agreed first and was waiting for Hamas to even see if they want to consider this deal, even though it is very lopsided in their favor. So this is the news out of Israel today.
Yeah, let's talk more about the point that you brought up earlier. Won't a lot of these prisoners being released just go back and fight for Hamas against Israel, or perhaps even make their way to Lebanon to fight for Hezbollah?
Absolutely, and that has been the history of this repeated pattern. Just this October 7th attack that we recently had, one of the masterminds was actually released in a previous exchange, similar to the one that we're talking about today.
Wow.
It's again very difficult because Israel has learned its lesson, so to speak, but cannot really act upon it because when you have civilians, when you have these innocent, hostages that we're talking about, they have to do whatever they can to bring them home. But again, how many lives will be lost in the future because of those terrorists that are being released? That's really the very difficult situation that Israel finds itself in, and that they have made this decision to finally try to bring them home after all these months.
It's such a high number, 800 to 40. Why not 40 for 40 or even 100 for 40?
Right, exactly. And I know that they have tried. They have tried everything. And I know when people are out on the streets, obviously these are all individuals who couldn't even place Gaza or Israel on the map, but many of them are yelling ceasefire. Even members of Congress, as you know, the Squad, yelling ceasefire now. If you saw them at the State of the Union, they were carrying signs that said ceasefire now. Well, Hamas has been the one to turn down so many different offers for various hostage swaps for the prisoners and ceasefire proposals. So it has always been in the hands of Hamas. It has been theirs to reject, and they had rejected many times. So again, Israel finds itself in this difficult position to try to bring home the hostages, but yet also is finding itself in a very vulnerable position in terms of security by allowing these hostages to go and to allowing the prisoners rather to be freed. And also think about all these months that these hostages have been in captivity, being raped, being deprived medical attention. Again, babies and elderly. So it's very difficult, and of course there is no real solution to this other than to give them the prisoners that they want, release the terrorists that they want, and Israel feels that this is the agreement that they have to make in order to bring home those innocent hostages.
So, Lisa, the Iran regime, which many people would argue is funding a lot of these proxy wars, was showing off their latest drone at the Qatar military trade show, named the Gaza. The manufacturer claims this remote-controlled weapon with a 68-foot wingspan has a range of about 1,600 kilometers, 1,000 miles, and can carry, 13 mounted guns or other pieces of artillery.
Right. So imagine this, Iran's regime that was formerly being heavily sanctioned, heavily isolated from the world community and the world economy, is now selling oil from 60 to 90 billion dollars in oil revenue, finding partners like China and Russia, selling weapons to Russia, allowing them to fire them down into Ukraine, and now obviously flexing its muscles all throughout the region. Not only are they funding the Houthis, as we're seeing them in the Red Sea, or Hezbollah in Lebanon, or Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the West Bank and Gaza, but also flexing their muscles at these trade shows to say, ah, look at us, we have all this new technology, and yet doubling down on the war between Hamas and Israel by naming this piece of equipment the Gaza. So really showing where they stand and being bold enough, being rogue enough on the world stage to flex their muscles yet again. The Iran regime just got one message out of the Biden administration from the international community at this moment, and that is that there will be no repercussions until the end of the Biden administration. If they should be reelected, they have another 4 years of this. They're playing out the clock. They're doing everything that they can to really stick it to the West and to really show their might, their development, their technology, and this is just one example of that.
So if Trump is elected, how do you think he'll approach this war?
Well, we saw that Trump was sandwiched between Obama and Biden's Iran policies. And if we're just talking about Iran policy or foreign policy in general, very different. We saw Obama and Biden, very similar policies when it comes to Iran's regime, appeasement, let's sit down and have a nuclear deal. President Obama actually signed that nuclear deal in 2015, loosened the sanctions, gave them the breathing space because their ideology regarding Iran was that they can be negotiated with, we can normalize relations with them, we can communicate with them, etc. Donald Trump stopped short of calling for regime change. He didn't say that he wanted to actually cause a revolution in Iran, but what he did was put them under what he called his pressure campaign. Pressure campaign was having sanctions that are very targeted and well enforced, isolating Iran's regime from not being able to participate, whether it's in the World Bank or any other global organizations, and really stopping those individuals from coming over, stopping the visas that are going on, and really it worked. We saw that they actually were diminished to the point where the Iranian people were able to come out onto the streets in the aftermath of the Masa Amini death. That was the 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian girl who was beaten at the hands of the regime because of her hijab, if you recall. That was in September 2 years ago. And then you saw all the protests that surrounded that. Well, that was because of the environment that was ripe for that. The economy had tanked. The Iranian people felt that they had the support of the White House under Trump. They have the support of the UN under Nikki Haley, and that all of that changed. And again, Trump, love him or hate him, with regards to Iran policy, he did do everything that he could to do an about face from the Obama era in showing them that there's a new sheriff in town, that he's going to take things much more seriously when it comes to Iran's regime, when it comes to terrorism. He defunded a lot of the organizations that were giving that Iran's regime was giving money to, including UNRWA and a lot of the Palestinian aid, because he accused them of pay to slay, which is exactly what's going on right now. All of those terrorists who were involved in October 7th will get a hefty stipend for themselves and their family. So I think that there is a huge difference, a discrepancy between these different foreign policies. So come next year, we'll see who's going to take the White House, and that will tell us everything we need to know with regards to our positioning regarding Iran's regime.
Lisa, Russian President Vladimir Putin has blamed the shooting at the Moscow concert, which killed at least 143 people, on Ukraine. Yet ISIS has claimed responsibility. Is there a connection there?
We'll leave it to Putin to use every opportunity to say he's right and this fits his narrative. So if he blames it on Ukraine, well then yes, Ukraine got the message to ISIS to carry out this attack so that they can, look, it's a bit far-fetched, especially because we have ISIS claiming responsibility. On the other hand, we really don't know if it was ISIS. I'll tell you why. ISIS has done this in the past where they have a false flag, right? Oh, this happened, we're going to claim responsibility. But in this case, we have videos. We have, they are claiming responsibility. We have apparently Russia says that they have apprehended many that are involved in the planning of all of this. So in this case, I would lean towards saying if ISIS says they did it, they actually did it. And Putin hasn't been the most honest broker throughout his life, particularly in the present moment as he continues his war on Ukraine. So there we have it. Of course, ISIS has resurfaced, and I think if you ask people in the Middle East, is ISIS the biggest threat? No, but right now it is making waves again in places like Afghanistan and Syria, and now here in Russia. So it's important to keep our eyes on the growing threat of ISIS. But again, I will go back to Iran's regime being even a bigger threat of supporting terrorism throughout the region.
And Russian authorities, like you mentioned, they've arrested 11 people in connection with a gun attack, including 4 of the suspected gunmen. And apparently, Lisa, I was reading on Reuters and some other reports as well, that ISIS is targeting a lot of countries which are clamping down on Islam. Are you hearing the same thing?
Yes, so this is, I mean, it makes sense, right? They are the Islamic State. They will go after anybody who, that their goal is to spread their version of Islam. And that is exactly what we saw out of Iran's regime. Their goal after 1979 was to spread their version of Islam, which is why we saw a lot of different proxy wars between states like Saudi Arabia and Iran fighting each other. But now it's become a more common goal to fight Western ideologies, to fight anything that is fighting Islam, and for Islam to take over the globe, whether it's Sunni or Shiite. They're now working together in many instances to make this, to really spread their influences throughout the world.
Lisa, people are still fleeing Haiti as gun violence and gang violence in the Caribbean nation escalates even further, and more than 1,600 U.S. citizens have filed emergency paperwork requesting help evacuating the island. Also, no immediate foreign military aid is expected to arrive in Haiti to help the country's already beleaguered police force.
Right. So, well, priority right now is the United States is telling everyone to get out. We're seeing a lot of hands being raised for help. 80 of them landed in Miami late last week. I think there will be more of these rescue missions, so to speak, to get the Americans or anyone with U.S. citizenship out of harm's way. The country has gone amok, as you know, if you've been following the reports, gang violence. This is not something that they can get a hold of because the head of the country has been cut and resigned. The prime minister resigned as well, and now we're looking at really no end in sight. So the only thing that the United States is really prioritizing at the moment is getting these individuals out of Haiti.
And something that we discussed before, how much of that gang violence will actually spill over into the Dominican Republic, considering they share the same island?
Right, that's the fear. Not only that, but to end up, taking boats to Florida and getting into the United States. Again, we have so many porous borders. Florida, I'm not so worried about in terms of being porous, in the sense that, DeSantis will fight any kind of violent or unvetted individuals from coming over, and I think that there have been a few boats that have been captured already, and this is just the beginning of it. So to your point, I think there is always spillover, and in this case, because we don't know who that spillover is, are these innocent people who are trying to flee the war, or are these actual terrorists or gang members who are trying to get into the country, whether it's the Dominican first or then to the United States? That's exactly the same fear we have at our southern border, is that yes, there are very many well-intentioned individuals who want to come here for the American dream, but there are also many coming from different countries, men of fighting age, where you don't know what they're coming here for, what their intentions are, or why they're coming through the southern border.
The number of reports surfacing from a number of media outlets, Lisa, that many of the illegal immigrants who stormed the border in El Paso, Texas, knocking over members of the Texas National Guard, have now been processed and released into the United States.
Right. So they can do no harm, right? There's no insurrection when it comes to immigrants. Look, it is very dangerous what's going on right now. The lawlessness that we are allowing is unheard of. Look, first and foremost, I'm a daughter of immigrants to this country, so I believe in legal immigration to allow those who are using the process correctly to come over. But guess what? For those who actually champion immigration and immigration rights, this is actually getting in the way, because the people who are filing and trying to come over illegally, their files are on hold because we just cannot absorb the sheer number of individuals trying to get into this country. So those who are cutting the line, so to speak, and coming over in this illegal way, they're risking their own lives. They're risking our lives because we don't know who they are. They can't be properly vetted. The coyotes are taking advantage of them. They're being raped. They're drowning. There's so many risks that are involved in coming over. The children are getting separated from their parents. So they're already going through so many obstacles. And then when they come over, again, we can't vet those individuals. Why are there individuals from Iran's regime in Syria coming over through our southern border? Why are there members of various gangs and drug cartels coming through our border? Why are there Chinese people coming through the border? Again, these individuals need to come through the legal way so that it could be properly processed and vetted, and so that we can allow people who generally truly want to be coming into this country, to allow them to come in. We need the workforce. We welcome those who want to come here for a better life. And again, because we cannot absorb the sheer numbers, this will not end well. How can we absorb these individuals? They will become homeless. They will be unemployed. I mean, the list goes on and on. There is no good ending to this, whether you're for immigration or you're against immigration. This is across the board a bad idea. And I think by the time the Biden administration wakes up to this, or if they ever want to wake up to this, it's going to be too late.
So let me ask you something. Is the United States still the land flowing with milk and honey?
Well, you know what? In some ways it is. And in some ways, for those who have lived here and continue to live here, if you talk about the price of basic groceries and gas and, inflation and everything else, just, the crime, everything else, this is not the country that my parents came here for. My father came to the country for his education, and then the Iran Revolution happened, and they ended up staying here. So, came here for all the opportunities and all the things that I love about this country is because I see that through my parents' eyes and all the opportunities they had because they were immigrants to this country. But that's not the same sentiment that is shared among the immigrant class right now, coming to this country and not having those opportunities because they just, again, cannot. They're going to cities, getting bussed around, not able to find those opportunities, not able to get the housing that they want or need or that can be absorbed. And even if they're being put up in hotels, how long is that going to last? And then you're bankrupting the same city that you want to contribute to and work in and be prosperous in. So it's not a balanced equation. It's not going to work out. And again, there's no way to really stop this from happening. So that is why we're seeing record numbers of immigrants that have come in just in February, and now we're in March. We'll have to see the numbers, but just in February we had a record number. So we know that is just peaking. And again, if you are somebody who wants to make that move and come through the border, wouldn't you do so before the end of this administration? If there would be an end to this administration, again, we're not sure what's going to happen in that election, but I do think that people are playing out the clock, and they know that this is a free for all right now, so they're taking that opportunity.
She's our foreign affairs expert and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari. Thanks so much for joining us once again from the City of Angels.
Thank you.